The security cameras in the Sterling mansion never lie. They capture every moment, every breath, every secret. For Michael Sterling, these cameras were his shield, his way of protecting his son after losing his wife in a mysterious accident. But on a cold Boston evening, when he reviewed the footage from his son's room, what he discovered wasn't a threat. It was something far more shocking. Through the clinical black and white images, he saw something he hadn't witnessed in years. His son, Nate, was laughing. Real, genuine laughter that lit up his eyes, just like his mother's used to. And standing beside him was the new nanny, Rachel Foster, a woman who would soon make him question everything he believed about love, trust, and second chances. Sometimes the most shocking discoveries aren't the ones we fear, but the ones that heal us. Before this emotional story begins, leave a comment letting us know which city you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe for good karma. The Sterling mansion stood imposingly against the Boston sky, its walls lined with security cameras that never sleep, never blink, never lie. From his top-floor office, Michael Sterling watched the city through screens that captured every corner of his fortress, an untouched glass of whiskey on his mahogany desk. Screen 4 showed Nate's bedroom, where his 8-year-old son's coughing echoed through the night. Michael's hand instinctively moved to adjust the audio, his throat tightening at each labored breath. The soft blue glow of the medical monitors cast shadows on Nate's face, making him look even more fragile than usual. "Mr. Sterling?" Sarah Wilson's voice broke through the darkness. His assistant of 12 years entered with a familiar black folder. Nurse Jenkins just submitted her resignation. 14. Michael didn't turn from the screens. That's 14 nurses in 18 months. Dr. Anderson called again. Sarah placed the folder beside the untouched whiskey. He's concerned about Nate's deteriorating condition. He says the constant changes in care are affecting. I pay Dr. Anderson to treat my son's asthma, not to question my hiring decisions. Michael's voice carried an edge that would have silenced any boardroom, but Sarah had known him too long to be intimidated. There's something else. She hesitated. Today marks 2 years since Beth. The security footage from that rainy October night flashed unbidden in Michael's mind. Beth's car leaving the mansion's gates, the text she sent about making it to Nate's school recital, the police lights reflecting off the wet pavement hours later. Every excruciating moment captured by his cameras, yet none of them had been able to protect her. A particularly harsh cough from screen 4 snapped Michael back to the present. Nate had curled into himself, clutching the blue whale plush Beth had given him on his last birthday. "Schedule interviews with the top candidates for tomorrow," Michael ordered, finally turning to face Sarah. "And make sure they understand about the cameras. I won't have any complaints about privacy once they're hired." "Yes, Mr. Sterling." Sarah moved toward the door, but paused. "Nate asked if you'd read him a story tonight." Michael looked at his son on the screen, then at his watch. "The Tokyo investors—" "Can wait," Sarah finished softly. "He's had a rough day." For a moment, the only sound was Nate's muffled coughing through the speakers. Finally, Michael nodded, but his eyes drifted back to screen 4, his window into a world he could observe, but somehow never seemed to fully reach. The Sterling Enterprises meeting room was bathed in morning light when Rachel Foster entered. Her navy blue dress spoke of quiet professionalism, while her steady gaze conveyed something Michael hadn't seen in previous candidates. Complete self-assurance. "Miss Foster," Michael began, studying her resume. "Your credentials are impressive. 6 years of specialized pediatric care, advanced respiratory therapy certification, exemplary references." He looked up. Almost too perfect. Rachel's lips curved slightly. "Mr. Sterling, I learned early that perfection is an illusion. What I offer isn't perfection, but absolute dedication and honesty. The response caught him off guard. Most candidates launched into rehearsed speeches about their competence. "Tell me about your last position." "I cared for a young patient with severe respiratory issues for 3 years." A shadow crossed her face. It was challenging but rewarding. "Unfortunately," she paused, and Michael noticed something genuine in her hesitation. "Unfortunately, we lost him 6 months ago." "And you think you're ready to take on another complex case?" "Because loss taught me compassion, not fear." Her direct gaze met his. "Your son deserves someone who understands that caring goes beyond medical protocols." Michael stood, walking to the window. "Miss Foster, let me be clear. This position requires more than professional competence. There are security cameras throughout the mansion. Your privacy will be limited. Many find it invasive." "I understand your need to protect your son, Mr. Sterling." Rachel's voice remained steady. "If I were in your position, I might do the same." She paused meaningfully. "But I hope you'll realize that trust is built through actions, not surveillance." Before Michael could respond, a commotion outside the door drew their attention. Nate, who was supposed to be at his morning therapy session, burst into the room, followed by an apologetic Sarah. "Dad, I heard the new nurse was here and—" His voice trailed off as he saw Rachel. What happened next would later appear on camera 16 as the moment everything began to change. "You must be Nate," Rachel smiled, kneeling to his level. "I hear you're interested in marine biology." Nate's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "The whale book peeking out of your backpack." She winked. "Did you know that blue whales have hearts the size of a small car?" Nate's face lit up. "Really? Dad, did you know that?" Then something extraordinary happened. Nate laughed. It was a sound that made Michael freeze, one he hadn't heard in months. "I worked at the Marine Research Center before specializing in pediatric care," Rachel explained, her attention still on Nate. "Would you like to hear about the time I helped rescue a baby seal?" "Can she stay, Dad?" Nate's eyes shone with an excitement Michael had almost forgotten existed. "Please?" Michael observed the interaction through years of business instinct. Rachel hadn't just connected with Nate. She'd done so while naturally incorporating breathing exercises into their conversation, something he noticed but his son didn't. "Miss Foster," Michael cleared his throat, "the position requires living in-house, extensive background checks, and signing multiple confidentiality agreements regarding the security systems." "I understand." Rachel stood, keeping a gentle hand on Nate's shoulder. "And I accept, provided one condition." Michael raised an eyebrow. No candidate had ever dared to set conditions. "That you give trust a chance to grow alongside your security measures." Later that evening, reviewing the interview footage, Michael would replay that moment several times. There was something in Rachel Foster's quiet confidence that both unsettled and intrigued him. Something that made him wonder if perhaps some things couldn't be captured by even the most sophisticated cameras. Through the mansion's surveillance system, Michael watched Rachel's first day unfold across multiple screens, each telling its own story. Camera 12, library, 9:15 a.m. Rachel discovered Nate's collection of marine biology books hidden behind his prescribed textbooks. "These are impressive," she said, pulling out a worn copy of Ocean Explorers. "Mom got them for me," Nate whispered. "Dad thinks I should focus on regular studies first." Instead of redirecting him to schoolwork, Rachel smiled. "What if we combine both? Let's practice your breathing exercises while learning about deep-sea pressure." Camera 15, study room 10:30 m. "Imagine you're a whale," Rachel's voice came through clearly. "When they dive deep, they take one big, slow breath." She demonstrated, and Nate followed. "Then they hold it, just like we're doing now. and release slowly as they rise. Michael leaned closer to the monitor, noticing how his son's oxygen levels improved during this game. Better results than with traditional exercises. Camera 8, medical room, 2:45 p.m. Rachel was making detailed notes in Nate's medical journal. Her handwriting was precise, clinical, yet something caught Michael's attention. In the margins, she'd drawn small diagrams correlating Nate's breathing patterns with his emotional states. "Mr. Sterling?" Sarah appeared with the daily reports. "You've been watching the feeds for 3 hours straight. Look at this." He pointed to camera 6, where Rachel was now teaching Nate about whale songs while administering his afternoon medication, something previous nurses had always struggled with. "She's documenting everything, not just medical data, but behavioral patterns, emotional responses." Camera 20, garden view, 4:30 p.m. "Dad!" Nate's excited voice drew Michael's attention to the garden feed. His son was at the window, pointing at something in Rachel's notebook. "Rachel says I can start a research project about marine mammals. It'll help with both science and English." For the first time in years, Michael saw genuine enthusiasm in his son's eyes. He pressed the intercom button, about to remind them about homework schedules, but stopped when he noticed Rachel's methodical documentation. Patient shows marked improvement in respiratory function when engaged in topics of interest. Recommendation: integrate marine biology into therapy sessions. Camera 3, main hall, 7 p.m. "Your detailed notes are impressive," Michael commented as Rachel finished her shift. "Thank you." She handed him a comprehensive report. "You'll find that I've cross-referenced his emotional states with his breathing patterns. There's a direct correlation between his enthusiasm for marine biology and improved lung function." Michael scanned the document, recognizing the careful analysis of a professional beneath the warmth of her approach. "This is quite thorough." "Mr. Sterling," Rachel paused at the door. "Sometimes the most important things can't be captured on camera, but I'll always document what I observe, both medically and otherwise. Trust is built on transparency." After she left, Michael found himself rewinding the day's footage, watching the subtle changes in his son. For the first time since installing the cameras, he wasn't looking for things to worry about. He was seeing possibilities he hadn't considered before. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the Sterling mansion's windows as Rachel organized files in Michael's home office, a task he had reluctantly authorized after weeks of her proving herself trustworthy. Camera 7 recorded her methodical movements as she sorted through medical records. Then, a moment captured on the security feed would change everything. A folder slipped from the top shelf, scattering papers across the floor. As Rachel knelt to gather them, her hand froze over a police report. The header read, "Suspicious circumstances. Elizabeth Sterling fatal accident investigation." Her professional instincts screamed to look away, but one line caught her eye. "Brake system tampering confirmed. Targeted sabotage suspected." "What are you doing?" Michael's voice, sharp as ice, cut through the room. Rachel stood slowly, the report still in her hand. The security camera captured the tension crackling between them. "Mr. Sterling, That's confidential." He stepped forward, reaching for the papers, but Rachel didn't release them. The brake lines were cut. Her voice was quiet, but firm. "And according to this, Victor Blackwood, your head of security at the time, was the last person to inspect her car." Michael's face drained of color. "How dare you?" "The same Victor Blackwood who still has access to your company's security systems," Rachel pressed on. "The one I've seen monitoring the mansion's cameras twice this week. You've been watching the watchers." A mix of anger and something else, respect perhaps, flickered across his face. "I protect my patients, Mr. Sterling, all aspects of their safety." She met his gaze steadily. Did you know Blackwood made 4 unusual transfers to offshore accounts the week before Beth's accident? Michael staggered slightly, catching himself against his desk. How could you possibly know that? Because before I was a nurse, I worked in forensic accounting, a skill that came in handy when investigating my brother's medical malpractice case. She placed the report carefully on his desk. Some of us install cameras, Mr. Sterling. Others learn to look beyond them. The security feed captured their standoff in silence. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice hoarse. Why are you telling me this? Because Nate deserves more than a fortress. He deserves the truth. Rachel's voice softened. And you deserve to know who really betrayed your trust. Camera 7 recorded the exact moment Michael Sterling's carefully constructed world began to crack. His hand trembled as he picked up the report, eyes scanning details he'd missed in his grief-stricken state 2 years ago. "Get out," he whispered. "Mr. Sterling." "Get out!" His shout echoed through the mansion's corridors. As Rachel headed for the door, she turned back one last time. "Cameras can record betrayal, Mr. Sterling, but they can't prevent it. Only trust in the right people can do that." The security feed showed her leaving the office, head held high. But it was the camera in Nate's room that captured what happened next, his small hand reaching for his inhaler, startled by his father's uncharacteristic outburst and Rachel's absence from her usual post by his side. That evening, the mansion's cameras captured a series of moments that would reshape the Sterling family forever. Camera 4, Michael's office, 7:15 p.m. Michael sat at his desk, an envelope containing a severance check before him, when Sarah Wilson entered with Nate's evening medical report. "The termination papers for Miss Foster," he said without looking up. "Have them ready by morning." Sarah hesitated. "Sir, Nate's oxygen levels today were the highest they've been in months." "That's not—" "And there's something else." Sarah placed a piece of paper on his desk. "He drew this in therapy today." The security camera zoomed in as Michael unfolded his son's artwork. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands beneath a starry sky. A tall man in a suit, clearly Michael, a small boy with an inhaler, Nate, and a woman with gentle eyes, Rachel. Above them, surrounded by a golden glow, floated another figure, Beth, watching over them with a smile. "He hasn't drawn Beth since the accident," Michael whispered. Camera 10, Nate's room, 7:30 p.m. "Why is Dad angry?" Nate asked Rachel as she adjusted his evening medication. "Is it because of my drawing?" "No, sweetheart." Rachel's voice remained steady despite the termination letter in her pocket. "Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings, like the layers of the ocean. Remember how we talked about that? The deep currents and surface waves?" Nate coughed slightly. "But the ocean always finds its balance, right?" Camera 6, hallway, 7:45 p.m. Sarah intercepted Rachel outside Nate's room. "You found something in those files, didn't you? About Beth." "Sarah, 2 years ago, I tried to tell him something wasn't right about that accident." Sarah glanced at the nearest camera. But grief made him trust cameras more than people. Camera 1, main entry, 8 p.m. Michael watched Rachel gather her things, severance check untouched on the side table. "Miss Foster." His voice stopped her at the door. "That drawing." "Nate sees more than we think," she replied softly. "He sees his mother's love continuing through everyone who cares for him. He sees you trying to protect him, and he sees me choosing to stay despite your fears." "Choosing to stay?" Michael's eyebrows rose. "You're being terminated." Rachel placed the severance check back on the table. "No, Mr. Sterling, I'm choosing to stay. Because Nate needs stability more than you need control. And because someone needs to help you see that not every person who enters your life is a potential threat." The security feed captured Michael's stunned expression as Rachel continued. You can either fire me and prove that your cameras matter more than your son's happiness, or you can take a risk and trust that some people are worth letting in. In the background, they heard Nate's familiar cough, followed by his voice reciting the ocean facts Rachel had taught him, his way of staying calm during breathing exercises. Michael looked from the monitor showing his son's room to Rachel's unwavering gaze. For the first time, the cameras caught something new in his expression: uncertainty. The security cameras at Sterling Enterprises captured Victor Blackwood's unexpected visit on a grey Tuesday morning. His expensive suit couldn't mask the nervous energy that set off every one of Rachel's internal alarms. Camera 14, corporate lobby, 9:15 a.m. Mr. Blackwood. Rachel's voice was carefully neutral as she dropped off Nate's updated medical reports. I didn't expect to see you here. The new nanny. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Still surviving Sterling's surveillance state, I see. Some of us have nothing to hide. She held his gaze a beat too long. Camera 22, executive floor, 9:20 a.m. Through the feed, Michael watched Blackwood's reaction to Rachel's comment. The slight twitch in his left eye, the way his hand brushed his collar, details that had escaped notice 2 years ago, but now seemed glaringly obvious. Sir, Sarah's voice came through his intercom. The forensic accountant's report you requested just arrived. Camera 18, conference room 9:45 a.m. Rachel wasn't supposed to be there when Michael opened the report, but Nate had insisted on showing his father a new marine biology project. The cameras recorded the moment in crystal clarity. Michael reading the document. Blackwood entering uninvited, the color draining from Blackwood's face as he recognized the financial records. You've been busy, Victor. Michael's voice was deadly quiet. $2 million transferred to a Cayman account the day before Beth's accident, another $1 million the day after. Michael, I can explain. The brake lines, Rachel interrupted, stepping between them. You knew Beth always checked her tire pressure before long drives. You waited until then, didn't you? The security feed captured Blackwood's mask cracking. She was going to audit the security division. She'd found discrepancies. She was going to my son's recital. Michael's hands gripped the table. She was going to watch our 8-year-old boy play the piano. Camera 15, hallway 10 a.m. Security guards escorted Blackwood out, but it was the quiet moment afterward that truly mattered. Michael stood at the window, his reflection fractured in the glass. I trusted cameras more than I trusted her instincts, he whispered. Beth knew something was wrong with the company finances. She tried to tell me. Rachel approached slowly. She trusted you enough to investigate. Now trust yourself enough to finish what she started. The cameras recorded Michael turning to face her, really seeing her for the first time. Why did you dig into this? Why risk your position here? Because healing isn't just about medicine, Mr. Sterling. Sometimes it's about finding the truth, even when it hurts. Through the surveillance system, they watched Nate in his classroom downstairs, happily explaining ocean currents to his tutor. His mother's intuition for justice and his father's determination combined in one resilient little boy. The cameras can't protect us from everything, Rachel said softly. No, Michael agreed, finally understanding. Sometimes they just record our mistakes until we're ready to learn from them. The October storm hit Boston with unexpected fury, rattling the Sterling Mansion's windows and disrupting the power grid. In his surveillance room, Michael watched with growing unease as the security cameras flickered between static and clarity. Camera 4, Nate's room, 11:45 p.m. The first warning came as a wheeze. Nate sat bolt upright in bed, his hands clutching his chest, The medical monitors began their urgent beeping just as a thunderclap shook the house. "Dad?" Nate's voice was frighteningly thin. I can't. The camera feed cut to static. No, no, no! Michael slammed his hand on the console. When the image returned seconds later, Nate's oxygen levels were plummeting. Camera 6, hallway, 11:47 p.m. Rachel was already running, her years of medical training evident in her efficiency. She reached Nate's room just as another power surge made the cameras stutter. Status? Michael's voice crackled through the failing intercom. Severe bronchospasm, Rachel reported, her hands moving swiftly to set up the nebulizer. The storm's affecting the air pressure. We need to... The power went out completely. Emergency lights cast an eerie glow as Michael raced upstairs. He found Rachel using her phone's flashlight to check Nate's vitals, her voice steady as she coached him through breathing exercises. "Remember our whale song, Captain?" she said softly, long and deep, just like we practiced. But Nate's breaths were coming in sharp, painful gasps. The backup generator hummed to life, but the medical equipment remained ominously dark. The surge fried the circuits, Michael realized in horror. The nebulizer. We'll do this the old way. Rachel's calm authority made both father and son focus on her. "Mr. Sterling, sit behind Nate. Let him feel your breathing rhythm." Michael hesitated only a second before climbing onto the bed, positioning his son against his chest. Lightning illuminated the room in stark flashes, the security cameras now silent witnesses to their struggle. "Deep breath in," Rachel demonstrated, her hand on Nate's chest. "Feel your dad's breathing, sweetheart. Match his rhythm. Tell ... Nate struggled between breaths. "Tell the ocean story." "It was a night like this," Rachel began, preparing a manual breathing treatment with practiced hands, "when the blue whale mother and her calf got caught in a storm." Michael found himself breathing in deliberate rhythm, feeling his son's desperate attempts to match him. Rachel's voice wove the story while her hands never stopped working, checking pulse, adjusting position, monitoring response. "The mother whale knew," she continued, "that above the storm, the stars were still shining, just like your mom is watching over you now." Nate's grip on Michael's arm gradually loosened as his breathing began to stabilize. The rain pounded against the windows, but inside their small circle the crisis was slowly passing. "The whales," Nate whispered, his voice raspy but stronger. "Did they make it?" "They did," Rachel smiled, her hand still monitoring his pulse. "Because they trusted each other and stayed calm in the storm." The backup generator finally kicked in fully, bringing the medical equipment back online. The security cameras whirred back to life, recording the aftermath. Michael Sterling, still holding his son, his usual rigid posture replaced by protective embrace. Rachel, her professional mask softened by genuine relief. And Nate, exhausted but stable, surrounded by both his protectors. "Dad?" Nate murmured sleepily. "Can Rachel tell us another story?" Michael met Rachel's eyes over his son's head. In that moment, with rain lashing the windows and his son breathing steadily against him, the truth he'd been fighting finally broke through. Some things were more powerful than any security system. "Yes," he said softly. "I think we could all use another story." In the aftermath of the storm, as dawn broke over Boston, Camera 1 captured Victor Blackwood's unexpected return to the Sterling mansion. This time, he wasn't the polished executive. He was a man undone by guilt and fear. "The police are closing in," he said, standing in Michael's office, rain still dripping from his coat. "I thought you should hear it from me first." Camera 7, Michael's office, 6:15 a.m. Through the lens, the confrontation unfolded like a Greek tragedy. Rachel, still in her medical scrubs from Nate's crisis, stood quietly by the door, while Sarah took notes with trembling hands. "Beth wasn't supposed to be in that car," Blackwood's voice cracked. "The plan was to target your vehicle during the Tokyo merger meeting. She wasn't the intended victim." Michael's knuckles went white around his desk edge. "You were aiming for me." The embezzlement, she discovered everything. Not just the missing funds, but the entire network. She left a coded message in Nate's piano books, pages of ocean facts that were actually banking coordinates. Rachel's breath caught. That explained Nate's inherited love for marine biology. It was his mother's final gift, a clue hidden in plain sight. She knew. Michael's voice was hollow. "That last morning she tried to tell me something was wrong, but I was too busy with the merger. I told her we'd talk later." Camera 9, hallway, 6:30 a.m. The security feed showed Nate appearing in the hallway, drawn by the voices. Rachel moved swiftly to intercept him, but not before he heard Blackwood's next words. Beth recorded everything. She hid the evidence in a children's story about a mother whale protecting her calf from ocean hunters. She knew Nate would keep the book safe because it was from her. In the hallway, Nate clutched his beloved ocean book tighter. "Mum was trying to protect Dad," he whispered to Rachel, "like the whale in the story." Camera 7, office, 6:45 a.m. The feed captured Michael's transformation from grieving widower to avenging husband. 2 years, he said, his voice dangerous. 2 years of watching cameras while the real threat sat in my boardroom. "The evidence is all there," Blackwood slumped. "In the book, in the offshore accounts. She was brilliant, and I killed her for it." As police sirens wailed in the distance, Rachel led Nate into the office. The boy walked straight to his father's desk, placed his ocean book down, and opened to a dog-eared page. "Mum used to say," Nate's voice was clear and strong, "that the deepest truths are like deep-sea creatures. They always come to the surface eventually." The cameras recorded Michael gathering his son in his arms, tears finally breaking through his carefully maintained facade. Beth's final message, hidden in her son's favorite stories, had finally surfaced, just like she knew it would. Through the lens, Rachel watched the Sterling men embrace, understanding that some wounds could only heal when the truth was finally set free. That evening, after Blackwood was taken into custody, the mansion felt different. Camera 12 captured an intimate moment in the library that would mark the beginning of something new. "I dreamed about Mom last night," Nate said, curled up in his favorite reading chair. "During the storm." Rachel sat beside him while Michael stood by the window, his finger hovering over the camera control panel. "She was swimming," Nate continued, "like the whales we read about. She said she's happy because she can still watch over us, just from a different ocean now." Camera 12 flickered as Michael's hand trembled over the controls. "You know," Rachel said softly, "I used to have dreams about William too. My brother loved the stars as much as you love the ocean." She glanced at Michael. "After we lost him to cystic fibrosis, I was so afraid of loving anyone else that I built my own walls. Different from your father's cameras, but walls nonetheless." "What changed?" Michael asked, moving closer. "I realized William wouldn't want his memory to become a barrier. He'd want it to be a bridge." Rachel smiled at Nate. "Just like your mum left you clues in ocean stories because she knew you'd understand them someday." Nate looked up at his father. "Dad, do you think Mum would like Rachel?" Michael's hand moved to the control panel again. "Your mother once told me that true love isn't about holding on tight. It's about trusting enough to let go." With those words, he pressed a button. One by one, the surveillance screens went dark. Camera 12, the last one recording, caught the final moments. Michael joining Rachel and Nate on the couch. Nate opening his ocean book, now a testament to both his mother's love and courage. Rachel's surprised smile as Michael took her hand. And just before the feed cut out, Nate's voice. Mum always said the best stories have happy endings and new beginnings mixed together. The camera powered down, leaving the Sterling library in natural evening light. For the first time in 2 years, no electronic eyes watched their every move. Instead, somewhere above, a different kind of guardian kept vigil. One who had always known that love was stronger than fear and trust more powerful than any surveillance system. Beth's room had remained untouched for 2 years, a time capsule of loss. But today, as Michael, Rachel, and Nate stood in the doorway, it felt less like a shrine and more like a treasure chest waiting to be opened. "Look what I found," Nate said, pulling out a leather-bound journal from his mother's desk. "Mum's writing." The first entry made Michael's breath catch. "My dearest boys, if you're reading this, remember that love isn't about perfect moments. It's about perfect intentions. Michael, you try to protect everyone with systems and schedules, but sometimes the heart needs room to breathe. And Nate, my little ocean explorer, never stop diving deep for what matters." Rachel stepped back, giving them privacy, but Michael caught her hand. "Stay." Beth would have wanted her words to reach all of us. As they read together, Beth's voice seemed to fill the room. True love is unconditional, like the ocean that keeps flowing regardless of what we put in its path. It adapts, it evolves, but it never stops moving forward. Then they found the letter, dated the day before the accident. "Michael, if anything ever happens to me, promise you won't let fear become your compass. Our son needs to see that love is stronger than loss. And when you find someone new, because I hope you will, remember that the heart expands. It doesn't replace." The spring wedding wasn't supposed to have rain, but as the first drops fell on the garden ceremony, everyone saw it as Beth's blessing. "Mum always danced in the rain," Nate announced, standing proudly between Michael and Rachel. "She said it was nature's way of washing away the old and blessing the new." Before exchanging vows, Michael turned to their guests. 2 years ago, I thought love was something to be monitored and protected. Today, I'm learning it's something to be lived and shared." He reached into his pocket and pulled out Beth's pearl necklace. Beth wrote that these pearls were formed through time, patience, and adversity, like true love. "Rachel, they belong to you now, not to replace memories, but to create new ones." As Rachel received the pearls, Nate tugged at her dress. "Want to know about the 7 colors of love?" His eyes sparkled with wisdom beyond his years. "Red is Mom's love that's still here. Orange is Dad's protective love. Yellow is my love for both of you. Green is nature's healing love. Blue is Rachel's caring love. Indigo is the love that's coming. And violet," he smiled mysteriously, "is the love we haven't discovered yet." The rain fell softly as they exchanged vows, and somewhere between the drops and tears, a family was reborn. The Sterling mansion transformed with the seasons. Where cameras once watched, windows now let in natural light. Where silence once reigned, laughter echoed through corridors. Nate's medical reports showed remarkable improvement. Dr. Anderson credited it to reduced stress and increased happiness, though everyone knew it was more than that. The boy who once struggled to breathe now spent hours explaining his marine biology projects, his voice strong and clear. "Did you know," Nate announced at breakfast, "that whales sing different songs every year? But they remember all their old songs too. Like us, we have new happy memories, but we keep the old ones safe." Michael, watching his son's enthusiasm, caught Rachel's eye across the table. They shared a smile, remembering how far they'd come from security feeds and suspicion. The library, once a fortress of screens, now housed Nate's growing collection of marine research and Beth's memory box. Her journal sat proudly displayed, its wisdom continuing to guide them. Love is like the tide. It may go out, but it always returns, sometimes bringing unexpected treasures to shore. Rachel had added her own note beside it. And sometimes those treasures come in the form of second chances. As evening fell, the family gathered in Beth's memorial room, now a warm space filled with photos, shells, and stories. Nate placed his latest marine biology award next to his mother's picture. "See, Mom? I'm exploring the ocean, just like you knew I would." Michael wrapped an arm around Rachel, watching their son. No cameras recorded this moment. They didn't need to. Some memories are best kept in the heart, where love's 7 colors paint them in shades that no lens could capture. Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, and somewhere above, Beth smiled, knowing her family had finally learned to dance in the storm. As our story of the Sterling family comes to a close, we're reminded that love, like the ocean, has many depths and currents. Sometimes the most precious treasures are found not through constant surveillance, but through trust and openness of heart. From Beth's hidden messages in ocean stories, to Rachel's healing presence, to Michael's journey from fear to faith, and Nate's innocent wisdom about the 7 colors of love, each character teaches us something profound about second chances and the courage to begin again. Perhaps you too have your own story of love, loss, and renewal. Maybe you've built walls to protect yourself, only to discover that the greatest protection comes from letting the right people in. Or perhaps, like Beth, you've left behind messages of love that continue to guide your loved ones. Remember, as young Nate taught us, love has 7 colors, each one representing a different kind of connection, a different way of caring. And just like the ocean that fascinated him so much, love has the power to heal, to transform, and to bring new life to even the most carefully guarded hearts. The rain that fell on Michael and Rachel's wedding wasn't just water from the sky. It was a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful moments come when we're willing to dance in life's storms, trust in new beginnings, and believe that love, in all its forms, is worth the risk. What color would you add to your rainbow of love today? Thank you for taking time to witness this story with us. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. Every story we share is meant to move and transform. If you found inspiration in today's tale, simply leave a 9 below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Until our next story unfolds.